Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. It's been a while since I've been in this room at 7:30, so kind of miss it. On behalf of Pilot Flying J, we couldn't be more proud to be in this community as our corporate headquarters, our 24,000 employees. Truly appreciate everything that Knoxville has to offer, and hopefully we can continue to give back and be a strong corporate partner to Knoxville and the Chamber. So thank you again, Mark. It's with great pleasure and honor to introduce Mayor Burchett, Mayor Tim Burchett of Knox County. We're really excited. I'm personally excited because when I was on the Chamber board, we worked hard to try to get Midway in a position to allow it to be developed commercially, and of course we struggled through that. And Mayor Burchett now is, I think, really excited about the opportunity to develop Midway. It's all we've got. So hopefully we can get real focused on that and be a great target for corporate entrance into this area. Mayor Burchett, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, and thank you for being here this morning.
Thank y'all for allowing me to be here, and I'm always, when I see groups like this, I think somebody's probably been forced to be here because everybody's heard me a million times, and I'll try to refresh my jokes. I always remember I was speaking when I was first elected to the legislature after, I don't know, maybe I was just in the Senate, I'm not sure, but I was invited to speak over the University of Political Science class. And I remember I walked in there, and the students, you know, some of them probably were older than I was. Heck, when I was first elected to the legislature, there's actually interns that were older than I was. And I remember walking in, I was sitting in the back, and this young lady beside me, she had an AO Pie shirt on, and I thought to myself, wow, AO Pies have done me enough damage in my life. I think I'll probably just not talk to her. But then I said, hey, what are you doing in here? I said, who's speaking today? And she goes, I don't know, some boring politician. She said, and I said, yeah, I guess you got to get extra credit. You got to get all the credit we can. She goes, yeah. And then it was Dr. Lyons' class, actually. And then Dr. Lyons, he went through this introduction, and then he said, State Senator Tim Burchett. And this girl just looked at me, and she just shrunk down in her chair, and I said, She was right, yeah. But anyway, it's a pleasure being with y'all, and I'm sorry that you had to get extra credit, especially on this rainy morning. I want to introduce and I also want to thank my good friends at Pilot. I say Pilot, I just say Mr. Haslam. He's been a good friend of mine since I was a little boy. Still calls me Timmy. He's the only one that's allowed to do that in this whole room. So he'll call me and say, Timmy, and I say, hey, Mr. Haslam, and he always, even when I was in the legislature, he'd get mad at me about stuff, and and I'd say, I'm still buying my gas from you, Mr. Haslam, and he'd laugh and say, I'm still for you, Timmy. And I always remembered, I'm real close to my folks, and of course they're both gone now, but I remember when we were at the funeral home, and my daddy had just died, and me and my mama were there, and a family friend was there, and my phone rang, and I looked down there, and it was Big Jim, and I said, I better take this. Something might be going on. I might have said something and got myself in trouble again. And it was Mr. Haslam, and he said, Timmy, he said, Natalie and I were just sitting here thinking about you. He said, you need anything, you call us. He said, Charlie was our friend. And I said, thank you. And honestly, you think of him and you think of the money and all that, but he's been just a good friend of mine and my family's, and I'm proud to call him my friend. I don't know if he's proud to call me his friend or not, but he's been good to me. So Mitch, I appreciate you too, but they've been, you got it. And he raised a couple of good sons. They've both been very good to me. So also I want to introduce some folks that are here that are fellow people and fellow government people. My buddy George Wallace from City Council. George, where are you? Thank you, George, for being back there. And of course, Finbar Saunders. Finbar, you're not wearing the bow tie today. In honor of me, I appreciate it. Yeah, George has got it. And from Congressman Duncan's office, my buddy Bob Griffiths. Bob, where are you? Thank you, Bob, for being here at 7:30 in the morning. Dadgum, I appreciate it, Bob. I know it, and I still owe Bob $5. I think he's wanting to catch up with me after this over with. But also, some of my commissioners are here. My buddy Dave Wright, Chair Dave, thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, in case we need to leave, Commissioner Hornby has checked this exit and we can be.
Yeah, you make a hasty retreat. Yeah, well, I'll put all the heat on me up here. How about that? John Schoonmaker, John, new man on, but not a slouch in any regards. He's been great. Thank you, John. Bob Thomas, at large. Bob, old friend, thank you. My buddy Jeff Owenby, Jeffrey, thank you so much for being here from the 4th District. I guess I've gone through all the preliminary thank yous, but also I wanted to thank the Chamber for hiring this young lady. She's very knowledgeable, oddly enough, and she just does a wonderful job, and she's the new she's government liaison. What's the title?
Vice President of Public Policy.
Whatever. Anyway, government liaison. But she does a wonderful job, and I've known her for quite some time, and she's super knowledgeable, so she's going to be a great addition. So I want to thank y'all for that. And thank you, Mitch, for that nice introduction, and thank y'all for having me here. Of course, there's a lot of, I'm going to talk probably about 8 or 9 minutes maybe, and then I'm going to stop and answer questions, because generally that's the best thing that goes on. First time I went and spoke to a high school one time, I went to West High School, and I said, I'll open it up for questions. And a little girl raised her hand, and she said, and at the time this was kind of funny, but right now it wouldn't be, but she said, are you single? And I said, yes, ma'am, I am. And she said, good. She said, my mama's going through a divorce, and you seem like a nice guy. And the teacher was just freaked out, and I was like, and I said, don't worry. And then I said, I tell you what, get me an 8x10 glossy of your mama and a copy of her last W-2, and we'll talk. So she said, okay, I will. And I never did receive either one of those. But of course, like I said, there's a lot of good things going on in Knoxville and Knox County, and I can't say it without Knoxville and Knox County. Mayor O'Hara and I have a good partnership. She's a good friend, and we get along very well. And here and around downtown Knoxville, it seems like the businesses are opening, growing, outstanding rate. Outside of downtown and downtown north, there are really good things going on too. You know, you hear a lot about what's going on in the core, but out in the hinterlands, there's some great things. Commission just approved, as Mitch talked about, the rezoning of the Midway Business Park. So in the future, that will be an important economic driver for our entire region. As a matter of fact, Mr. Haslam called me and said, Timmy, that will be generational. And I said, I'll have to look that up, but I'll take that as a compliment, Mr. Haslam. Of course, in the past 2 years, we've seen private investment at historic levels. And this is something that, you know, and it's funny, I go talk to business people all the time, and they say, why aren't we bringing in business? I say, we are. I said, the biggest problem that we have is PR. And the problem that we have, and of course the Chamber's getting all nervous what I'm about ready to say, and it's not them, it's me, so when they get the call, everybody just say, Tim Burchett said this, not the Chamber. But if the state of Tennessee has anything to do with it, they handle the PR for it. And I think that's not a good thing. I think the Chamber they do the heavy lifting, the state comes in, and it's a historical problem that we have. And it started, since Randy Boyd's been there, we've talked several times about this, and they're correcting it. But truthfully, the credit should go in this room, so the folks in this room in the Chamber, because the good work they've done. Fresenius Medical, $140 million investment. That's over 600 jobs. Lifetime Products, $115 million investment, 500 new jobs. And these aren't jobs, you know, when we talk about, you know, somebody opens a new flea market or something. This isn't that kind of job. These are high-paying jobs. These are good folks. These are folks that went to school here, that grew up here, and that get to work in our community, and that's something we should celebrate. Leisure Pools, North American headquarters, and eventually they figure about 1,000 people will be anticipated to be here. That's new jobs, folks, and that's something we ought to celebrate. Of course, it doesn't even begin to tell a story about the countless other places that I like to visit on a regular basis. My buddy's down here at Archer's Barbecue, K-Brew, which just opened. Bob, that's right there in the Federal Building, a little coffee shop. Those guys opened down there on Broadway. Of course, you know how tight I am. I'm not going to pay $5 for a dadgum cup of coffee, but I'll, you know, now I've got an 8-year-old daughter. Apparently, I buy a lot of $6 cups of hot chocolate. So. And I do it gladly, and of course all occasions, and so many other business that invested their money in our community. It's making Knoxville and Knox County, I feel like, a better place to live. Of course, we cut ribbons on big box stores and major chains, and I always like to say, as politicians, we're good for taking credit for stuff we had absolutely nothing to do with. It's you all that make it happen. It's not, and I mean, these are my friends. They help. We help with some of it, but the real truth is the heavy lifting goes to y'all, and that's, it should, when I go to a lot of these ribbon cuttings, I often think it should be the people out in the crowd cutting the ribbon, and I should be applauding them. So that's kind of like my philosophy on government. I think our economy's strong, and we help our families in this community to get better, and that's really what we should all be about. I'll stop there and answer any questions, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I've got a ton of notes here, but honestly, it's stuff y'all have heard before, and I'd rather hear what y'all have to say. If that'd be all right. All right, I'll stop there and answer any questions. All right, thank y'all very much. I was at some deal yesterday with a group of architects, and honestly, I mean, Mayor O'Hara had the first part. You know, there's a bunch of planners and stuff, and that's her crowd. And I told him, I said, I'm glad she was here. I said, you know, if it was a biker rally or a group of mechanics, you know, I would lead the charge, and then she could kind of come in on the tail end. But then I said, this is her crowd. So anyway, anybody have any questions of me or any statements? I see my friend Todd Napier there. Todd has done excellent work on the Midway. Without Todd, it wouldn't have happened. He worries a whole heck of a lot, and I've told him not to worry so much, but let us handle some of the heavy lifting. But he's been great. Mr. Edwards, thank you for being here, sir.
Yeah, I told you I needed a new watch for Christmas. You failed to get it.
But I do go with you to the Pizza Palace, so.
We do that. So, let me turn it back around. What is it we need to do to help you as much?
Well, I think the main thing is support our commission. You know, they're my board of directors, and we've got, and support the folks that are in office that we've got. I've had a good run. I mean, I'm term limited, obviously. And the folks that are there, we've got, you know, I feel like we are on the cusp or on the brink of really busting through in our community. We've got so much going on. We've got so much energy. I mean, we have great corporate sponsors that are out there. I see my buddy from Vanquish. Where's Vanquish? Where are they? Right here. I mean, this is the company. You ought to do a little research on this company, folks. The guy started it. He's a Marine. And, I mean, how many different companies y'all have? 20, thank you. 28. My buddy Eric runs that thing, and he is coming on strong. He's kind of under the radar. And those are the type of things that I think we need to celebrate, and y'all need to help us with that and promote that. And I think too much, we get too hung up on the negative and the press. Of course, I realize they always say that's what sells, but I always have reminded them that Andy Griffiths is in like 300 languages in 150 countries right now, and it's always just a good story and a good news, and we've got a lot of good stories. I think that's one thing we can do is help promote what's the good things going on in our community, because it sure is a heck of a lot of good things. You know, the Midway thing was huge. I mean, and it's interesting when Mike and them, you know, I know it kind of gets everybody a little nervous when I walk in the room when they're talking to some big corporate citizen that wants to come and invest in our community. But the truth is, they already know that we're a right-to-work state. We fought to keep it that way when I was in the legislature. And they know we're a low-tax state. We fought that too, to keep it that way. And the thing that they need to see is our people. I always say that our biggest selling point is the people in this community. You know, and I always get aggravated, and the chamber's been good about this. They take them out to the people. You know, they can go sit at some fancy restaurant in any town in the country, and that's what they do. They schmooze them. But you know, these cats, some of them knocking down $1 million a year, and going to a fancy restaurant just isn't. You know, they've been kind enough to allow me to take them to places like Wright's Cafeteria, where people have their names on their shirts, not like in here, but they just, you know, Joe or Bill. But you know what? Dadgummit, I want them to meet the people that they're going to be working with. And they know the schmooze fest. They get that everywhere. And that's why I love our community so much. You know, I remember it's funny one time, and I go back to Mr. Haslam, but it's a funny story. We were down at Wright's eating, and we weren't talking about anything. We were just catching up. You know, you just, tell me what's going on. And and he called me or something. We went down there, and it's when I was in the legislature. I remember this guy came up, and he had a coin collection. He said, "You mind if I sit with y'all, Tim?" And I said, before I could say anything, the guy put his tray down and sat there, and Mr. Haslam just kind of laughed, and he said, "I'm such and such," and he said, "What do you got there?" He said, "A coin collection." And he said, "Well, let me see it." And we were looking through it, and he said, "Well, what do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I work over there at Pilot." And he goes, "Really? Which one?" And I thought, and Mr. We just laughed about it and went on. But my point is that people come up to you and talk to you in this community. And I used to say there's really not an area in this community when my mama was still alive that I would not be afraid for her to be broken down, just because I know the people in the community. And our biggest asset is our people. I go back to that, and I strive to focus on that, because the numbers and stuff, yeah, that's going to be great, and parks are great, and all of this is great, but our people are our best asset. I think sometimes we forget that. So, sorry I went to preaching there, but there'll be a love offering when this is over with. You don't know what a love offering, if you're Episcopal, raise your hand. One of our good Baptists will go around and explain to you the concept of a love offering. It involves your checkbook and a building that never gets built. Yes, sir.
A real mundane subject, but roads. How engaged is the county with the state on all the conversation about how we're going to take care of roads?
First thing about the roads is when I took office, we were patching roads, but we weren't doing any. And I believe now we're up to about 50 miles of roads. Is that close, Michael? 50 miles of roads that we're taking on, because we realize our responsibility in the infrastructure, and people can't get places, and school buses, things like that. People can't get into business without the roads. Of course, the big, as I told the governor, the big elephant in the room is the gas tax. And the problem you have there is, I think they're going about it the wrong way. They're going to go to the chambers of commerce and sell it. And that's what I tried to explain in the meeting, and the press was here, and oddly enough, they did not get my whole point, which was fine, but it didn't really matter to me. We go around and they'll sell the chambers on it, and everybody in this room go, yeah, we need it. But when you're down here at the West Knox Republican Club or the Boyd Cloud Democrat Club, nobody's selling it down there. And the other side is just saying, we don't need that. And my point I was trying to make to the governor was that you need to go out and put a price tag on every pothole, basically. You need to go out and these civic groups and things, the non-traditional groups, because that's where politics is really going now. That's what you're seeing on the national level, is non-traditional politics. The status quo just isn't cutting it anymore. It used to be you'd get an editorial, and some of our PR people would sit down with the editor of the News Sentinel at the Regis, and you get a big editorial, and everybody would capitulate. It just doesn't work that way. As a matter of fact, it goes the exact opposite way now, because I think people are kind of fed up with the media. So I think it's going to have to be sold by individuals, sold by non-traditional groups before that's going to happen, or you're not going to see it. Now they're putting it off because it's an election year. And the reality is they should have put, I call it a multiplier. They should have allowed for inflation. I think they got it in, and then I think it was under Governor Alexander, and they thought, well, next year we'll come back and put that in, but they never did. So it's going to be a tough road to hoe. Very tough. That's an old country saying. Yes, sir. Mr. Cohen.
Obviously, key to economic development and growth is a great workforce. So we're in the middle of searching for a new school superintendent. As a school decision, I'm not sure that you talk with them. What are the skills we need in that superintendent?
Needs to be somebody that communicates. I don't know that you need somebody I think you need somebody that understands the classroom. I've heard people say it might be like it'd be two different people, somebody that run the business end and somebody that run the school end, because those two aren't always together. I think you're going to end up, if you're not careful though, somebody go the far extreme to the other side, and then you're not gonna get anything. You got to have somebody that communicates though, and the teachers have to feel like they've got their back, because teachers are unhappy. They're not going to publicly say it. You're going to have a group wear a bunch of shirts and come down front and say you're the greatest thing in the world. But your old time teachers, I think you're going to have to reach out to them, and the traditional educators, plus the new ones, and you got to realize it's a new thing coming. And that's why I've said, you know, if we pay teachers more, it does two things. It ensures that the folks that are there know that they're appreciated. Yeah, you're going to pay some bad ones. We know that. But it's going to drive more qualified people into the field. And that's something I think we need to look at. But we got to look at, too, teachers. You know, we've got coaches, we've got all these other things. And I feel like we maybe attacking too many fronts at one time. And we probably ought to, you know, when I think, was it 40% of our third graders are not reading at grade level, that's a problem. That's a big problem. I think, too, you're going to have a superintendent that understands that not all kids are going to go to college. And there's nothing wrong with working out at Stowers Machinery, turning a wrench, diesel mechanic who could make close to $100,000 a year. And there's nothing wrong with somebody learning how to fix somebody's hair and other things like that. You know, Old Rural High School, I think one of the worst things we ever did. If you ever want to see a study in economics and the effect of a school on a community, go up around Old Rural High School. Anybody here grow up in Knoxville? Remember Rural when it was a high school? It was a thriving community. It was about, I don't know, Richard, what was it, about half black, half white folks? 50-50. You didn't have racial problems. You had a community school. They had I remember they had an upholstery shop. You had to wait 3 months to get a car in there because people were lined up. They had beautician class. There's I don't know what you call it, beautician. I call it beautician. Cosmetology, thank you. I'm not very politically correct, obviously. I've just lost the beautician vote right there. But I think we need to address that. We need to address that, and we need to attack it, because our workforce, a lot of our workforce is not going to go to college, but there's great jobs. In rural high school, when we closed it down, and you know, and a lot of the do-gooders said we need to close it down and we need to go to this monster school, and we got in a big lawsuit and it went back and forth. And then, you know, you go up there now, it looks like parts of war-torn Bosnia. Honestly, I go up there and metal detect. You don't want to go up there unless you got a pistol. I mean, it's not a good place to be. And it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that in the early 80s. And it's just, and you go up there and the building's caved in. It's just a horrible, horrible case study. So, we need to get back to somebody that understands trades and things like that also. So I think the main thing, though, you're going to have to somebody that communicates to the teachers, communicates to the parents, and to the public, taxpayers. So another long story. I apologize. Alan?
Tim, you mentioned the non-traditional is working these days in the national election. What is your take on the national election?
Well, here I go. I'm going to make some people very unhappy, but the Republicans deserve it. I mean, if I got to look at, and I'm sorry, I'm going to call the name out, if I got to look at dadgum Mitch McConnell one more dadgum time, he doesn't speak for me. Jimmy Duncan speaks for me. He speaks my language. He says, you know, we're taking it in. We're not going to spend it if we don't have it. That's something my mama would say, you know, and that's the thing we understand in our community. And I think it's just an arrogant bunch, both parties, and that's why you're seeing Trump and Bernie doing so well. Man, even if Bernie wins, he loses because of their system on the Democrat side. You got these super delegates that, you know, can just do whatever the heck they want. And I think what you'll end up seeing happen, if that ends up happening, if Hillary wins and she really doesn't, I think you'll see the young folks pull off, and they'll either not vote or they'll go independent or vote for somebody like Trump. Because, you know, with Trump, it's funny. I ask people, everybody in this room, no, we're not for Trump. But I go individually and go, well, I kind of like some of the stuff he's saying. You know, I'm kind of sick of this. And that's the truth. I mean, you know, you ask people what they don't like about him. Yeah, he says some crazy stuff. And then, man, I really like that one thing he says. I was talking to some labor people, and I have a lot of friends in the labor movement, believe it or not. They don't, you know, as I've told them many times in this county, you're not going to beat me, so we might as well be friends. So, come in my office. Got an autographed picture of James A. Hoffa Jr. right there on my desk. In my office, but I lost my train of thought. I had James. I saw that picture in my head, and I kind of shook me up a little bit there. Now, But I think you're just seeing a lot of frustration, and I'm so sick of endorsements. You know, I could give a rat's whatever who Kim Kardashian's for, or any of those boneheads in Washington. Really, I mean, you know, who are they to speak for me? They don't speak for me. As I stated, you know, Congressman Duncan speaks my language, and people like him just get shouted down. But in the end, you know, we're running up these incredible debts, and we say we're passing it on to our grandkids. I mean, we're passing it on to our great-great-grandkids now. It's out of control. And nobody accepts responsibility. I get so sick of that, too. It's always somebody else. Dadgummit, you know what? If something screws up in Knox County, it's on me. And that's just the way it is. And none of those cats realize that. They get up there, and I tweeted this one time. I said, if somebody wearing a Brooks Brothers suit takes their coat off and rolls their sleeves up and tells you they work for a living, don't believe it. And yeah, that's what all those cats do. And they just think that we're going to, you know, it's Pavlov's dog. They ring the bell and we just come running. And they do this time and time again. And I suspect in this state, on some of these statewide races, our incumbents better be careful. They better get home and start speaking the language pretty quick, because the natives are very restless. You know, Senator Alexander, the guy Carr ran against him and got over 40% of the vote. And, you know, you'd have had somebody in there that had a little jack, the Koch brothers or Koch brothers or whatever they are. If they'd have pumped some money in, you might see another U.S. Senator in that seat. So I think we better wake up. This country better wake up, or there's some new changes coming. I know this, if Trump gets in the White House, I'm taking my $1,200 of hard-earned savings, and it's going right in the stock market. Don't tell my wife I have $1,200 in savings. Because I don't know, how many guys or gals have had their spouse tell them, you know how much money I just saved you?
Back to the road, Tim. Of course, the history is that Tennessee has one of the best road programs in the country, because they always pay as you go.
Pay as you go.
We don't have any bond debt.
That's correct.
As long as they just keep that gas tax up a little bit every year, it's a state that way.
Yes, sir.
But that's one thing people need to think about, the gas tax. That's a pay-as-you-go thing. Now, the problem is, of course, fuel consumption.
Yeah.
But I don't know another solution.
There isn't. It's bite the bullet, you know, unless, of course, I thought I'd have a hover car by now, but it didn't work out. So anytime you put wheels on the road, you're going to tear up your roads. And there is no other solution. They can patch it. You will be able to patch it for a few years, I suspect. Governor Haslam's done a good job of managing our money, and they'll be able to, if they have to, move money over. Nobody could do that like Bob Corker, though. And when he was financed, he would find money it was crazy. In these funds and things that were unchecked at the time. Made a lot of people nervous, and you should have. But going back to that, there probably is no other solution. But you know, but if the people choose it, that's, you know, if they choose not to do it, then that's what we're left with. All right, one more question. All right, I'll hang around afterwards, and y'all can come be individually critical of me if you'd like.
Alan asked you about, if you want to comment on the local races, it's not tradition, I know, for some of the years.
Right. Well, it's obvious. I'm for our law director. He's worked good with me, and I go down the hall and I need a lawyer, and he answers my questions, and he speaks my language, and he protects the taxpayers. His job. Really, the law director is a funny business, though, because you figure you got a lawyer who represents me, who represents the county commission and the school board, and all three of us can be battling at once. I mean, that's a crazy system. They put that, I suspect, I know the people that put it in the charter actually wanted to be in that position, and that's why it was in the charter. A little Knox County history making some people uncomfortable, but that's the truth. Tough. You're stuck with it, and that's what we've got. And so we've got, let's see, you know, I don't know, the property assessor, that office is in turmoil, obviously, the rumors and things and the talk of investigations going on. So that's going to continue. That seems to be, I think the FBI has a cottage industry here in Knox County right now. What other races are there? I'm losing my train of thought. Yeah. Okay. Well, the school board, I'm not even going to comment on that because I get twisted up on all that. But I think the school board that's part of the problem too. You have 62% of the budget in Knox County, 62 cents out of every dollar, over $400 million, and it's a nonpartisan race. I think, and I know I differ with my friend Mitch Steenrod, but I think we need to get back to electing our superintendents. I just do. I think that anytime you say you're going to appoint somebody, to think that we don't have qualified people within this zip code is I think that's wrong to say that we don't have. We've got major corporations. We have the University of Tennessee. We have Tennessee Valley Authority. We have Oak Ridge National Laboratory. We have these major corporate players. To say that we can't pull somebody from that area, to me, is the ultimate act of arrogance, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. Get me off that subject. Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
I think your dad, Dean Burchett, might put tolerance class.
Wait, say that again.
I think your dad wouldn't believe that I went to that class actually no more than Mr. Graybill. Dean Burchett was the
Probably.
students that you did.
It's funny.
The only dean's list I was ever on.
Yeah, it was funny when Daddy was an arch conservative, as you can imagine, Marine Corps, Second World War, combat guy, a lot like my buddy Bob Griffiths back here. He's a combat man, but he worked at the university, and of course it's the pit, usually the pit of liberalism in a lot of those areas, and I don't know how Daddy survived. He stayed over there. Came here shortly after he started in '54, I think, and retired in 2001, or 2002. But I remember when Marion Barry got busted, the mayor of Washington, D.C., he actually went to the University of Tennessee, and it's well documented that my dad and him had several run-ins when he was at the university, and Marion actually left the university at some point. And I remember it was either Time or Life magazine when he got busted allegedly for crack cocaine up in Washington in a motel room with a prostitute. They called my dad, and Dad said, "Brother, I'd love to tell you everything, but I'm not allowed to." So he was a man of honor. Anyway, thank y'all so much. Look, my phone number, 215-2005. You call for Tim and you'll get me. Thank you.